Today I'm going to talk about the biggest misunderstanding about harmonic complexity in jazz. And the goal here is to explain why dance changes often feel way harder than they actually are. And we're also going to have a look at an example. It's going to be Satin Doll. This here is going to be our example. Okay, let's go. Very often if we see chord changes, and there are many chords, just a number of chords and how long they play, right? They make us think like, oh, there are so many changes, oh, there are so many scales, oh, there is a lot to think about. And yes, it sounds logical to think about more chords equals more information, and therefore we need to play more and play more complex and do more things. But this is actually misleading, and that's what I'm going to try and talk about here in this video. And the experience is that when the harmony gets denser, right, there is more tension. We feel like imagine you're on the bandstand and it's a jam session, someone calls this tune and you've never played the tune, and then you go into Satin Doll, and then you say, oh my god, it's so many chord changes, there are so many things that are going on here, and then you feel overwhelmed, and then the tune starts and you're lost before you even play the first note. But that's actually not necessarily, because when you create your solos careful, if you actually get to the core of the chord sequence, and yes, it needs some intellectual understanding, but it's not even too complex, it's just reduced to the max. That's what we want to do. And it's not a skill issue here, it's more a mental model you need to follow. And this is something we're going to have a look at here today. So let's stick with this example here, Satin Doll. We're going to listen to how this actually sounds. That was 1A section of Satin Doll. Now, the big misunderstanding is here, yes, complex harmony needs a bit more control, but it's actually control about your mental model and what you're following, what you're actually thinking and how you're addressing it. It's not more tracking more chords. It's not thinking more about playing more arpeggios. It's not necessarily a huge mental effort, it's just a little adjustment. The music moves very quickly, right? So there were lots of chords which we just listened to, but the harmonic information that's actually in there is, first, it's repetitive, right? So there are repetitive patterns. Then there are just what we see is 2-5, 2-5, 2-5, 2-5, 2-5, 2-5, 1-6, 2-5, 2-5, 2-5, 2-5. So it's a lot of repetition, and it's just frames you need to think in, and you need to see the big picture. That's always going to be the solution. What we see when we go to a concert, experienced players, they take time to develop their solos. Experienced players, they take time to create something meaningful, and they don't care whether there are 100 chords played, because what they try to say, what they try to express, is actually not playing a lot of harmonic information, a lot of changes. They try to create energy, they try to create a mood, they try to create something musical, they try to create something meaningful. And even over dense harmony, an experienced player is going to play a simple solo, like in the Satin Doll, right? And the lines, they don't feel forced, they feel easy. And they stay relaxed in their articulation, in their phrasing, and they don't get stressed. And this is not accidental. The reason is, they actually think in a different frame, and that's what I'm going to share with you here today. So the shapes, they stay really clear in their phrases, and they just have a few reference spots, what they actually want to play. And it's less thinking, it's just having the right things to think about. And that's the journey that's a little bit tricky. So this is not going to come from one day to another, but when you get more experience, you understand that it's actually about just reducing the chords. And that's what I'm going to do here now. I'm going to reduce this here to the max. So remember this here. I'm going to create a second version where I reduce the chords. So here the 2 5 2 5 in the beginning, I just delete this here and delete this here and make this a G7. Now the very same is going to happen here in this one, and this is just an A7. Then here I just put in a D7 and then a D flat 7. What I'm actually doing is I'm just removing the repetition, and this is a dominant chord and this is a dominant chord, and then I just remove the 2 chord, because what's actually happening here is this is a 2 5 3 6 2 and then a chromatic movement into the 1 chord. So it's 2 5 3 6 2 5 1. And yes, you saw that correctly. No, that's... I have to change this here. So we're in the key of C. 2 5 3 6 2 5 1. And then when we compare it, yes, there are a lot of chords. Yes, absolutely, there is something to think about. But if you zoom out and you see what is the big picture, then the big picture actually it's a 2 5 3 6 2. Yes, 5 with a spice, 1. That's everything what's happening here. And this is the mental model. So you need the mental model. And why is it confusing to how so many chords? We are trained to think about everything we see. We are trained to explain what's happening, right? In a normal jazz lesson, I would explain you everything, and we go into details. But the zooming out, that's the crucial step here. And this analyze normally helps to learn, but not to real-time play. And when you play this tune in a fast tempo, you're going to be lost. Whatever happens, you're going to be lost because it's too much thinking. You cannot... If you go at this tempo, there is no way you can think about all the notes that could be played. But what you can do is you think about some cornerstones. And this is what we call, the cornerstones is what we call a guide tone lines. On this channel you find more information about guide tone lines. Check out guide tone lines, what they can do and why they are important. In this video we're not going to go into this. But guide tone lines is going to help you to create a horizontal structure instead of thinking vertically. And the reason why this is important is melodic lines, they are horizontal structures and it's not vertical structures. If you want to play a nice solo, you want to play a melody, and the melody moves horizontally and not vertically. That's why also it's a trap to play arpeggios all the time. And there are two relationships to harmony. So track everything consciously or trust the overall structure. So zoom out, see the big picture. That's very important here. Zoom out, see the big picture, and you will see there is the same tune, a different result. So what I suggest is you take this tune here, Sadindol, then you do exactly what I told you here. You check for the guide tone lines, and then you practice it. Once you practice this, you go back to the original and you do the very same. You try to follow your guide tone line. You did what you practiced before, and you trust the structure. You trust this structure instead of trying to run after every chord here. And you will be able to hear that you can still play busy solos, but it will sound different. And you can also play spacious solos and sound good, because you now know that this is the underlying structure, and this here is actually just the application of a simple structure, or the way Billy Strayhorn and Duke Ellington composed this, but this is the underlying structure, and all the movement, that's just more like a little gimmick for this very song. So the reframe you need is, it's not about complexity, it's about the structure, and you need to trust into the structure, and then the freedom increases. If you just play about this here, you have so much more freedom than here, and this is actually the freedom of expression. And if you understand how you can zoom out, this is going to help you tremendously when you're on the bandstand and you know what to focus on and what not to focus on. And this is the crucial distinction between amateur players who are running after the chord and more experienced players who know they can trust the underlying system because they know how to zoom out. So here are some final thoughts. If harmony feels heavy, the tune is rarely the problem. Most of the time is how you address the tune. And the more information, the more chord symbols there are, the more important it is to understand what is the underlying structure. And most of the time, yes, there are examples where the complexity is the tune, but most of the time there is an underlying structure you want to understand and follow, and then all these many chords, all these chords that are appearing every 2 beats, sometimes even every beat, it's just more like ornaments. So this here, what we're looking at, A3 here, these are more ornaments. This here is the underlying structure. That's when you zoom out. When you zoom in, you see the ornaments. But you don't want to play the ornaments. You want to play the tune, the underlying structure. I hope this was helpful. Click the link to follow to get updates about my next videos. The next one is going to come out soon.